Imagine waking long before sunrise, when the village is still silent beneath a sky filled with fading stars. Your day does not begin with breakfast or comfort, but with fire. Before anyone else opens their doors, you must awaken a roaring forge that will shape every horseshoe, plough, and sword the village depends upon. Tonight, let us quietly enter the workshop of a medieval blacksmith and discover why this was one of the hardest and most essential lives in the Middle Ages. The blacksmith's forge stands near the center of the village, close enough for farmers, merchants, and travelers to reach with ease. Long before dawn, the workshop is already alive with the scent of charcoal, the glow of fading embers, and the sound of tools waiting for another exhausting day. Behind these heavy wooden doors, every strike of the hammer will help keep the entire community working, protected, and prepared for whatever tomorrow may bring. Unlike many craftsmen, a blacksmith creates objects that nearly everyone depends upon. Farmers need plows and sickles to harvest their crops. Carpenters require strong nails and axes. Horses cannot travel safely without fresh horseshoes, while soldiers rely on sturdy weapons and armor. Even the smallest broken hinge or iron hook may bring someone to the forge, making the blacksmith one of the busiest people in the village. Although the workshop appears sturdy from the outside, life inside is filled with constant heat, noise, and danger. Sparks burst into the air with every powerful strike. Thick smoke lingers beneath the roof, and the roaring fire demands endless attention. A single mistake can ruin hours of careful work or leave painful burns that may take weeks to heal. Every day begins with skill, patience, and unwavering concentration. As the first rays of sunlight touch the rooftops, villagers slowly begin their own daily routines. Yet the blacksmith has already been working for hours. While most people are only beginning to wake, iron is already glowing bright orange upon the anvil. Our journey now begins where every medieval blacksmith's day truly started, with the difficult task of bringing yesterday's dying fire back to life before the village fully awakens. Before the flames can grow strong, yesterday's ashes must be cleared away with care. The blacksmith kneels beside the cold forge, removing burnt charcoal and arranging fresh fuel piece by piece. A small spark alone is never enough. It takes steady hands, patient effort, and a deep understanding of fire before the workshop fills with warmth. Every successful day depends on these quiet moments that few villagers ever witness. Soon the bellows begin their slow, familiar rhythm. With every push, fresh air rushes into the heart of the fire, causing the charcoal to glow brighter and hotter. The forge gradually awakens, filling the room with dancing orange light. Long before modern machines existed, this simple tool allowed medieval blacksmiths to create temperatures hot enough to soften solid iron and shape it into countless useful objects. As the fire reaches its full strength, the workshop comes alive with familiar sounds. Chains gently rattle, heavy hammers rest upon wooden benches, and rows of iron tongues hang neatly along the stone wall. Every tool has earned its place through years of daily use. Nothing inside the forge is decorative. Each object exists for a purpose, helping transform raw iron into something valuable for the entire village. Outside, the village slowly begins to stir as smoke rises from nearby cottages, and the first farmers prepare for another long day. Inside the forge, however, the work is already well underway. The blacksmith rarely waits for customers to arrive before beginning. Broken tools, unfinished orders, and urgent repairs from the previous day demand attention, ensuring there is never a shortage of work waiting beside the anvil. To many villagers, the blacksmith seems almost magical. A dull piece of dark iron enters the blazing fire and soon emerges glowing like the setting sun. With careful timing and hundreds of precise hammer strikes, that same metal slowly becomes a sharp blade a sturdy horseshoe, or a strong farming tool. Before we begin shaping iron ourselves, we must first understand the materials that made this remarkable craft possible. Now the first bar of iron is carefully placed inside the heart of the blazing forge. At first, nothing seems to happen, but slowly, the dark metal begins to glow a deep red before changing to a brilliant orange. A medieval blacksmith understood that color was more reliable than numbers. Without thermometers, years of experience taught exactly when the iron was soft enough to shape and when it was still too cold to strike. Charcoal was just as valuable as the iron itself. Unlike ordinary firewood, charcoal burned hotter and produced the intense heat needed for forging. Entire forests supplied this important fuel, and skilled charcoal burners spent days carefully preparing it. Without a steady supply, the forge would quickly fall silent. Every successful blacksmith depended not only on personal skill, but also on the hard work of many others throughout the countryside. As the iron reaches the perfect temperature, the blacksmith grips it firmly with heavy iron tongs and carries it toward the anvil. Every movement is calm, deliberate, and practiced through countless years of experience. The glowing metal begins cooling immediately after leaving the fire, leaving only a short window to shape it. There is no time for hesitation. Every second matters before the iron grows hard once again. The first powerful strike of the hammer echoes across the quiet village. Then another follows, and another after that, each blow carefully controlled rather than driven by brute force alone. Medieval blacksmiths understood that precision mattered far more than strength. A single careless strike could crack the metal, waste precious materials, or force the entire process to begin again from the very start. As sparks dance through the warm morning air, the forge settles into its familiar rhythm of fire, iron, and hammer. Villagers passing outside recognize these steady sounds as a sign that another working day has begun. Soon, farmers, merchants, and travelers will arrive carrying broken tools and new requests. Before we meet the first customers, we must understand why every corner of medieval life depended upon the remarkable skill of the village blacksmith. As the morning grows brighter, the forge becomes the beating heart of the village. Farmers arrive carrying broken plowshares. Merchants need iron fittings for their wagons, and horse riders wait patiently for worn horseshoes to be replaced. In medieval Europe, a village without a skilled blacksmith could not function for long. Nearly every trade depended upon the strength, precision, and reliability of the work completed inside this humble workshop. Blacksmiths earned respect not because their work was easy, but because few people possessed the knowledge required to master it. Heating iron to the correct temperature, shaping it before it cooled, and preventing cracks demanded years of careful practice. Most smiths spend their youth as apprentices, learning every movement from experienced masters until each strike of the hammer became almost instinctive through endless repetition. Unlike castles or cathedrals, the blacksmith's workshop rarely appeared in grand paintings or royal records. Yet without these craftsmen, many of history's greatest achievements would have been impossible. The nails holding wooden buildings together, the hinges securing heavy gates, the tools harvesting grain, and the weapons carried into battle all began as glowing iron resting upon an ordinary village anvil. Throughout the Middle Ages, the blacksmith's forge represented far more than a place of work. It was a center of innovation, craftsmanship, and community. New ideas spread between customers. Travelers shared stories from distant towns, and neighbors gathered while waiting for repairs. Within these smoke-filled walls, practical knowledge passed quietly from one generation to the next, shaping medieval life in ways few people ever noticed. Now that we understand the importance of the forge and the remarkable people who worked within it, our day is ready to begin in earnest. The fire burns brightly, the tools are prepared, and the first glowing bar of iron awaits its transformation. Our journey now continues into Chapter 2, where we rise before dawn and witness the demanding task of lighting the forge that powered every working day of a medieval blacksmith. Long before the first light appears beyond the horizon, the blacksmith rises from bed. The village remains silent, and only the distant call of an owl breaks the darkness. There is no time to linger, for the forge cannot wait. If the fire is not burning before sunrise, every repair, every order, and every customer will be delayed. The day's success depends entirely on these quiet moments before the rest of the village awakens. The workshop feels cold after the night. Yesterday's fire has faded into grey ash, leaving only a few hidden embers beneath the charcoal. Kneeling beside the hearth, the blacksmith carefully clears away the ashes while protecting any remaining warmth. Even the smallest glowing ember is valuable, for it can save both time and precious fuel. Nothing inside the forge is wasted unless there is no other choice. Fresh charcoal is added slowly, layer by layer, allowing air to pass freely between each piece. Unlike ordinary wood, charcoal burns with remarkable heat and very little smoke, making it ideal for forging iron. Across medieval Europe, charcoal burners supplied villages with this essential fuel. Without their difficult work in nearby forests, countless blacksmiths would have been unable to shape the metal upon which daily life depended. Now the blacksmith grips the long wooden handles of the bellows and begins pumping steady streams of air into the heart of the fire. With each movement, the sleeping embers awaken. Their dull red glow brightens into brilliant orange as flames climb higher. This simple machine may appear ordinary, yet it is one of the most important tools in the workshop, capable of producing the intense heat needed to soften solid iron. As warmth slowly fills the forge, familiar sounds return one by one. The crackling charcoal, the steady breathing of the bellows, and the quiet clinking of iron tools create a rhythm the blacksmith has known since childhood. Before the first customer arrives, everything must be ready. Soon the anvil will ring with powerful hammer blows. But every successful day begins with patience, careful preparation, and a perfectly tended fire. The blacksmith never rushes the fire. If the forge becomes too hot too quickly, valuable charcoal is wasted, and the iron may heat unevenly. Instead, the flames are allowed to grow slowly until they reach the perfect temperature. Years of experience have taught the smith to read the color of the fire, the movement of the smoke, and even the sound of the burning fuel before beginning the day's demanding work. As the forge grows brighter, the workshop slowly fills with warmth. The cold stone walls reflect the orange glow, while shadows dance across rows of hammers, chisels, punches, and heavy tongs. Every tool has been carefully placed where it can be reached without hesitation. A skilled blacksmith wastes neither movement nor time, knowing that careful organization makes every task safer and more efficient throughout the long working day. Outside, the eastern sky begins changing from deep blue to pale grey. Roosters announce the coming morning, and faint smoke rises from nearby cottages as families prepare breakfast. Yet inside the forge, several hours of work have already passed. While most villagers are only beginning to wake, the blacksmith has already prepared the fire that will serve the entire community from sunrise until evening. The smell inside the workshop is unlike anywhere else in the village. Burning charcoal, warm iron, aged timber, and traces of smoke blend into a scent that clings to clothing, tools, and even the walls themselves. To a visitor, it may seem harsh and unfamiliar, but to the blacksmith, this familiar aroma signals another honest day's work, filled with purpose, discipline, and generations of inherited craftsmanship. Now the fire burns with steady confidence, producing the intense heat needed to shape stubborn iron into useful forms. The bellows fall silent for a moment as the blacksmith prepares the first metal of the day. Soon glowing bars of iron will leave the flames and meet the anvil beneath the weight of a heavy hammer. Our journey now moves forward as we begin preparing the raw iron that will soon become essential tools for the medieval village. The first bar of iron is placed gently into the brightest part of the forge, where the flames burn hottest. The blacksmith does not watch a clock or measure temperature with instruments. Instead, years of experience guide every decision. By observing the changing color of the glowing metal, the movement of the fire, and the resistance of the iron itself, the smith knows exactly when it is ready to leave the flames. Maintaining the correct temperature is one of the greatest skills a medieval blacksmith could possess. Iron that remained too cool would resist every hammer blow, while overheated metal could weaken or even burn, becoming useless. Every piece demanded careful attention from beginning to end. Success depended not upon strength alone, but upon patience, discipline, and an intimate understanding of how fire and iron work together. While the iron continues heating, the blacksmith prepares the anvil for the day's first task. The heavy hammer is checked for cracks, the tongs are laid within easy reach, and smaller chisels and punches are arranged in order. These simple routines may appear ordinary, yet they prevent costly mistakes once the glowing metal leaves the fire. Good preparation allows every movement to flow smoothly without hesitation or confusion. A blacksmith rarely worked entirely alone. In larger workshops, apprentices arrived before sunrise to sweep the floor, carry fresh charcoal, organize tools, and help operate the bellows. These demanding responsibilities taught discipline from an early age. Before they were ever trusted to shape iron themselves, young apprentices spent years observing experienced masters, quietly learning that every successful craft begins with careful preparation. Now everything is ready. The forge roars with steady heat, the tools are neatly arranged, and the glowing iron has reached a perfect color. Outside, the village has fully awakened, and the first customers will soon arrive carrying broken plows, worn horseshoes, and damaged tools. Our journey now moves into the next chapter, where we discover how raw iron is transformed into the strong, dependable objects that keep medieval life moving forward. With the forge now burning at full strength, the workshop fills with a steady glow that pushes the last traces of darkness away. Every corner is illuminated by flickering orange light as the heat settles into the stone walls. For the blacksmith, this familiar sight brings quiet confidence. The hardest part of the morning is complete, and the workshop is finally ready for the demanding hours that lie ahead. In medieval Europe, a well-managed fire could burn continuously throughout the working day, but it demanded constant attention. The blacksmith carefully added fresh charcoal whenever the flames began to weaken, while adjusting the bellows to keep the heat balanced. Leaving the forge unattended was never an option. Even a few moments of neglect could waste valuable fuel or ruin the day's most important work before it had truly begun. By now, the first sounds of village life drift through the open doorway. Wooden cart wheels creak along dusty roads, chickens scratch across farmyards, and distant church bells announce the beginning of another ordinary morning. Yet for the blacksmith, several hours of careful preparation have already passed, while others are only starting their day. The forge has become the warm, beating heart of the entire community. Every successful blacksmith understood one simple truth. Mastering the fire meant mastering the craft itself. Before shaping a single horseshoe or forging a single blade, the flames had to be perfectly controlled. This knowledge was never learned from books alone. It was passed from master to apprentice through years of observation, repetition, patience, and countless mornings spent standing before the glowing forge long before sunrise. The fire is ready. The iron awaits. and the workshop has fully awakened. Soon the ringing sound of hammer against anvil will echo across the village as raw metal begins its remarkable transformation. Our journey now continues into Chapter 3, where we discover how medieval blacksmiths selected, heated, and prepared iron before turning it into the essential tools, horseshoes, and weapons upon which everyday life depended. Before a single tool can be forged, the blacksmith carefully chooses the right piece of iron for the job ahead. Not every bar is the same. A horseshoe, a farming blade, and a sword each require different shapes, sizes, and strengths. An experienced smith can judge the metal simply by its weight, texture, and appearance, knowing that careful preparation is the foundation of every successful piece of craftsmanship. Most medieval blacksmiths did not produce iron themselves. Instead, they purchased iron bars from local merchants or nearby bloomery furnaces, where iron ore had already been smelted. Even then, the metal still contained small impurities that required skill to manage. Every new delivery was carefully inspected, for poor quality iron could crack during forging and waste both valuable fuel and many hours of demanding labor. Before heating the iron, the blacksmith studies the day's list of work. A farmer may need a stronger plowshare before planting begins, while another customer waits for fresh horseshoes before traveling. Every task is arranged in a practical order to reduce wasted fuel and unnecessary effort. Good planning saves both time and charcoal, allowing the forge to remain productive from sunrise until evening. Once the iron has been selected, it is carried toward the glowing forge using heavy tongs. The blacksmith never places the metal directly into the hottest flames. Instead, it is warmed gradually, allowing heat to spread evenly throughout the bar. This careful process reduces stress within the iron and prepares it for shaping. Patience at this stage often determines the strength and durability of the finished tool. As the iron slowly changes from dark grey to glowing orange, the blacksmith watches every detail with complete concentration. There are no measuring instruments, no digital displays, and no written instructions. Only years of experience guide each decision. By reading the color of the metal and the behavior of the fire, the smith knows the exact moment when the iron is ready to meet the waiting anvil beneath the first powerful hammer strike. The blacksmith never leaves the heating iron unattended. Every few moments, the glowing bar is turned with sturdy iron tongs so that each side receives equal heat. If one end becomes hotter than the other, the finished tool may bend unevenly or weaken over time. This careful rotation reflects a simple truth of medieval craftsmanship. Patience and precision always produce stronger results than speed alone. While the iron continues to heat, the blacksmith carefully listens to the forge itself. The steady roar of burning charcoal, the gentle rush of air through the bellows, and the crackling fire all reveal whether the temperature remains correct. Experienced smiths learn to trust not only their ahs, but also their is. The forge seemed almost alive, speaking through familiar sounds understood only after years of daily work. Charcoal was never used carelessly. Producing it required large amounts of timber and many days of controlled burning beneath carefully covered earth mounds. Because fuel demanded so much labor, every handful carried real value. Blacksmiths carefully measured each addition to the fire, ensuring that enough heat was maintained without wasting precious charcoal that might be needed later in the day. As the metal glows a brilliant orange, tiny flakes of dark scale begin forming on its surface. These brittle fragments appear naturally as hot iron reacts with the surrounding air. Before shaping begins, the blacksmith removes as much scale as possible with quick, confident hammer blows. Cleaning the surface helps produce smoother tools and prevents small imperfections from weakening the finished piece. Now the glowing iron is ready for its first true transformation. Gripped firmly with heavy tongs, It leaves the heart of the fire and rests upon the one face of the anvil. Within moments, the workshop fills with the clear ringing sound of hammer striking hot metal. Every precise blow gradually changes a simple bar of iron into an object that will soon become essential to everyday medieval life. Few medieval blacksmiths could afford to waste even the smallest piece of iron. Broken nails, worn horseshoes, damaged hinges, and cracked tools were often collected, reheated, and carefully reshaped into useful objects once again. This practice saved both money and valuable materials. In a world where producing new iron required enormous effort, recycling metal was not unusual. It was an essential part of everyday craftsmanship. Not every piece of iron behaved in exactly the same way beneath the hammer. Some bars were softer and easier to shape, while others felt harder and demanded greater effort. Experienced blacksmiths quickly learned these differences through touch, sound, and observation. Long before modern metallurgy existed, skilled craftsmen developed an impressive understanding of their materials simply through years of daily experience at the forge. As the glowing iron rests upon the anvil, each hammer strike serves a specific purpose. Some blows lengthen the metal, others flatten it, while carefully aimed strikes create curves or sharp edges. Every movement is deliberate and controlled. Rather than forcing the iron into shape, the blacksmith works with the heated metal, gradually guiding it toward its final form through patience, rhythm, and remarkable precision. Contrary to popular imagination, blacksmiths did not spend every moment creating swords for knights. Most of their daily work involved practical items that ordinary villagers depended upon. Axes, sickles, plows, kitchen knives, hinges, locks, nails, and horseshoes filled the workshop far more often than weapons. These humble tools quietly supported farming, construction, trade, and everyday survival throughout medieval Europe. By now, the forge is operating at full rhythm. The fire burns steadily, fresh charcoal waits nearby, and prepared iron rests beside the anvil, ready for its next transformation. The workshop has become a place where skill, experience, and determination work together with fire itself. Our journey now continues into the next chapter, where we witness one of the blacksmith's most common and essential tasks, carefully forging horseshoes that keep both horses and medieval travel moving safely forward. As the morning grows busier, the forge settles into a steady rhythm that will continue until sunset. The glowing fire, the ringing anvil, and the measured swing of the hammer become almost like music within the workshop. Every finished piece reflects years of practice rather than moments of inspiration. Medieval blacksmiths understood that true craftsmanship was built through consistency, patience, and thousands of careful hammer strikes repeated day after day. For many villagers, the forge represented hope as much as hard work. A broken plow could be repaired before the planting season. A worn horseshoe could keep a journey safe, and a damaged axe could return a woodcutter to the forest. The blacksmith's skill quietly supported countless ordinary lives. Although their names rarely appeared in history books, their work touched nearly every family living in medieval Europe. Preparing iron was never simply the first step of the job. It was the foundation upon which every successful creation depended. A single mistake during heating could weaken the metal long before shaping even began. That is why experienced blacksmiths treated preparation with the same care as forging itself. Every careful decision made beside the fire protected the strength, durability, and reliability of the finished object. By now, the first customers are beginning to gather outside the workshop, each carrying something worn, broken, or in need of replacement. Some have traveled only from neighboring farms, while others arrive from distant villages with urgent requests. The quiet hours of preparation are over. From this moment onward, the forge will become one of the busiest places in the entire community. The iron has been selected, the charcoal burns steadily, and the workshop is fully prepared for another demanding day. Everything now leads toward one of the blacksmith's most common responsibilities. Our journey continues into Chapter 4, where glowing iron is transformed into sturdy horseshoes, essential tools that carried merchants, farmers, messengers, and travelers across the rough roads of medieval Europe. The first customer of the morning arrives leading a tired farm horse whose worn horseshoes have become thin after weeks of traveling across rough roads and rocky fields. Without strong horseshoes, even the healthiest horse can stumble, suffer painful injuries, or become unable to work. For medieval farmers and merchants alike, replacing one's shoes is not a luxury, it is essential for survival, trade, and everyday life. The first customer of the morning arrives leading a tired farm horse whose worn horseshoes have become thin after weeks of traveling across rough roads and rocky fields. Without strong horseshoes, even the healthiest horse can stumble, suffer painful injuries, or become unable to work. For medieval farmers and merchants alike, replacing one's shoes is not a luxury, it is essential for survival, trade, and everyday life. Before beginning the work, the blacksmith carefully examines each hoof. Every horse is different, and no two hooves are exactly the same size or shape. A poorly fitted horseshoe can cause discomfort, affect the animal's balance, and shorten its working life. Instead of rushing, the smith studies every detail, knowing that precision matters just as much as strength when protecting such a valuable animal. A straight bar of glowing iron is removed from the forge and carried to the anvil. With slow, controlled hammer blows, the blacksmith begins bending the heated metal into a gentle curve. The iron gradually takes the familiar shape of a horseshoe. Every strike is deliberate, creating smooth edges and an even form that will fit securely around the horse's hoof without causing unnecessary pressure. As the horseshoe nears its final shape, small nail holes are carefully punched through the glowing iron. These openings must be perfectly positioned so the shoe can be fastened securely without harming the sensitive parts of the hoof. This stage demands exceptional accuracy, for even a small mistake could injure the horse and force the blacksmith to begin the entire process again from the beginning. When the horseshoe has been shaped, it is briefly pressed against the trimmed hoof to check its fit. A small cloud of smoke rises as the hot iron touches the hard outer hoof, creating a sharp but familiar smell inside the workshop. Although this moment may seem alarming to modern eyes, the hoof itself contains no nerves in its outer layer. The brief contact allows the blacksmith to identify tiny adjustments before the shoe is permanently attached. Once the shape is perfected, the horseshoe is returned to the forge for a final heating. This allows the iron to become evenly warm before the finishing touches are made. The blacksmith carefully inspects every curve and edge, smoothing away rough surfaces with controlled hammer blows. Even the smallest imperfection is corrected, because a well-made horseshoe must endure countless miles of walking over stone, mud, and uneven ground. With the shoe complete, the horse's hoof is cleaned and trimmed using specialized tools. Loose pieces of horn are removed, and the surface is carefully leveled to create a secure fit. Medieval blacksmiths often possessed practical knowledge of hoof care as well as metalworking. A healthy hoof meant a healthier horse, and for many families, that animal represented transportation, farming power, and an important source of income. The finished horseshoe is positioned carefully beneath the hoof before small iron nails are gently driven through the prepared holes. These nails pass only through the hard outer wall of the hoof, avoiding the sensitive tissue inside. Although the steady tapping may sound uncomfortable, a skilled blacksmith knows exactly where each nail should be placed. Accuracy protects the horse while ensuring the shoe remains firmly attached. After the shoe is secured, The ends of the nails are bent, trimmed, and smoothed against the hoof to prevent them from catching on roots, stones, or uneven ground. Finally, the blacksmith watches as the horse takes a few careful steps across the yard. The steady rhythm of its movement confirms that the horseshoe fits correctly, allowing both horse and rider to continue their journey with confidence. In medieval Europe, a reliable horse could mean the difference between success and failure. Farmers depended on horses during planting and harvest. Merchants transported valuable goods between towns, and royal messengers carried urgent news across great distances. Every one of these journeys relied upon strong, well-crafted horseshoes. Our journey now continues as the blacksmith turns from caring for horses to forging the essential farming tools that fed the entire village. With the horseshoe firmly attached, the horse is led across the yard for one final inspection. The blacksmith watches every step with careful attention, listening for an even rhythm and looking for signs of discomfort. A properly fitted shoe allows the hoof to land naturally, reducing strain on the animal's legs. This final test is just as important as the forging itself, ensuring both safety and durability before the horse returns to work. In the Middle Ages, horses were among the most valuable possessions a family could own. They pulled heavy plows across fields, carried merchants and their goods between distant markets, and transported travelers over rough countryside roads. Keeping these animals healthy was essential to daily life. By protecting each hoof with strong iron horseshoes, the blacksmith helped preserve the strength and usefulness of every hard-working horse. The work rarely ends with a single horse. Before long, another customer arrives with a different animal requiring attention. Some horses have cracked hooves, while others have simply worn their shoes thin after months of travel. Every hoof presents a new challenge, and every horseshoe must be shaped individually. No two jobs are exactly alike, demanding patience, experience, and careful observation throughout the entire process. Although fitting horseshoes became one of the blacksmith's best-known responsibilities, it represented only a small part of an incredibly demanding profession. Between customers, the forge remained busy producing farming tools, repairing broken equipment, shaping iron hardware, and fulfilling special orders. From sunrise until evening, there was rarely a quiet moment inside the workshop, as nearly every villager depended upon the blacksmith's remarkable skills. As the final horse leaves the workshop with freshly fitted shoes, the ringing sound of the anvil soon begins again. New pieces of glowing iron are already waiting beside the forge, ready to become plows, sickles, axes, and countless other tools. Our journey now moves into the next chapter, where we discover how medieval blacksmiths forged the farming equipment that helped entire villages grow food and survive another challenging year. As the workshop grows busier, the steady rhythm of hammer striking iron echoes across the village. Farmers waiting outside exchange quiet conversations while travelers hold the reins of restless horses. The forge has become more than a place of craftsmanship. It serves as a gathering point where practical needs, local news, and everyday life come together. Each finished horseshoe quietly supports the movement of an entire medieval community. A skilled blacksmith never rushes the fitting process, no matter how many customers are waiting. An improperly fitted horseshoe can cause pain, reduce the horse's balance, and shorten its working life. Taking a few extra minutes to make careful adjustments protects both the animal and its owner. This commitment to precision earned experienced blacksmiths a reputation for reliability that spread far beyond their own villages. Historical records suggest that many medieval blacksmiths maintained close relationships with farmers, merchants, knights, and travelers who returned regularly for repairs and replacements. Trust was one of the most valuable parts of the profession. When people depended on horses for transportation, farming, and trade, they naturally returned to the craftsmen whose work had already proven strong, comfortable, and dependable through daily use. By midday, several newly shod horses leave the workshop, their hooves protected by carefully forged iron. Their owners continue toward distant markets, neighboring villages, or open fields with renewed confidence. Few of them stop to consider the hours of preparation hidden behind each horseshoe. Yet every safe journey begins with the patient work completed beside the glowing forge long before sunrise. With the final horseshoe finished, the blacksmith wipes away the sweat and turns toward a new stack of glowing iron resting beside the anvil. The next customers are already waiting with broken plows, worn sickles, and damaged farming tools. Our journey now continues into Chapter 5, where we discover how medieval blacksmiths forged the essential equipment that allowed entire villages to plant crops, harvest grain, and survive from one season to the next. As the last horse leaves the workshop, another customer steps forward carrying a worn plowshare with its edge chipped and bent after weeks of cutting through rocky soil. For a medieval farmer, a damaged plow is more than an inconvenience. It can delay planting, reduce the harvest, and threaten a family's food supply. The blacksmith understands the urgency. Before another field can be worked, this essential tool must be restored to strength. The damaged plowshare is placed deep inside the glowing forge, where the intense heat slowly softens the hardened iron. Unlike a horseshoe, this tool must endure tremendous pressure while cutting through heavy earth season after season. The blacksmith carefully watches the changing color of the metal, knowing that overheating could weaken it, while insufficient heat would make shaping almost impossible beneath the hammer. When the iron reaches the perfect orange glow, it is lifted onto the anvil with heavy tongs. Strong, deliberate hammer blows flatten the worn edge and reshape the damaged surface. Rather than creating a new tool from the beginning, the blacksmith restores the original plowshare, saving valuable iron, charcoal, and countless hours of labor. In medieval Europe, careful repair was often more practical than complete replacement. Beyond plows, farmers depend on many other iron tools throughout the year. Sickles harvest grain, hoes prepare the soil, axes clear woodland, and spades dig irrigation channels. Each tool serves a different purpose and must be shaped with its own balance, weight, and cutting edge. The blacksmith understands that even the smallest improvement can make long hours of physical labor slightly easier for hard-working farming families. As repaired tools begin to cool beside the forge, more farmers arrive carrying broken equipment collected from nearby fields. Some tools have cracked after striking hidden stones, while others have simply worn thin through years of constant use. One by one, each item is inspected before returning to the fire. Our journey now follows the blacksmith as another demanding day unfolds, revealing how every repaired tool quietly helps an entire village survive. The blacksmith understands that every season brings different demands. In spring, farmers need sharp plows and sturdy hoes to prepare the fields. During summer, broken wagon parts and harvesting tools arrive for urgent repairs. Autumn fills the forge with sickles needing fresh edges, while winter offers the only opportunity to restore heavily worn equipment. The rhythm of the forge follows the rhythm of the seasons just as closely as the farmers themselves. Sharpening a blade requires far more than simply striking hot iron. The blacksmith carefully thins the cutting edge with measured hammer blows before cooling and refining it against a grinding stone. A well-sharpened sickle slices cleanly through grain with less effort, reducing fatigue during long harvest days. Even a small improvement in the blade can save countless hours of labor across an entire farming season. Many tools return to the forge not because they are poorly made, but because they have faithfully served their owners for many years. Wooden handles may loosen, iron heads may crack, and cutting edges gradually wear away through constant use. Rather than discarding these valuable tools, medieval families rely on the blacksmith to restore them. Careful repair extends their usefulness and preserves precious resources that cannot easily be replaced. Historical evidence shows that agriculture depended heavily on reliable iron tools throughout medieval Europe. Without strong plows to break the soil, sharp sickles to harvest grain, and durable axes to clear woodland, food production would slow dramatically. Although kings and knights often dominate history books, the quiet work of blacksmiths played an equally vital role by supporting the farmers who fed every village, town, and castle. As another repaired plough is carefully lifted from the anvil, the blacksmith wipes away the last flakes of iron scale before inspecting every edge with experienced eyes. Outside, grateful farmers prepare to return to their fields, knowing tomorrow's work can finally continue. Inside the forge, however, the day's labor is far from over. Waiting nearby are new commissions that demand even greater precision, crafting knives, axes, and tools that must remain strong through years of daily use. Before returning each tool to its owner, the blacksmith carefully inspects every surface under the warm light of the forge. A weak edge, a hidden crack, or an uneven shape could cause failure during hard work in the fields. Rather than risking another repair, the smith corrects every small imperfection immediately. This careful attention to detail has earned the workshop a reputation for producing tools that farmers trust throughout every season. Many farming tools are finished by cooling the hot iron in a bucket of water beside the anvil. As the glowing metal touches the cold water, a cloud of steam rises with a loud hiss that echoes through the workshop. This rapid cooling helps harden certain parts of the tool, improving durability. Medieval blacksmiths learned these practical techniques through generations of experience, long before the science of metallurgy was fully understood. As repaired tools begin leaving the workshop, farmers express quiet gratitude before returning to their waiting fields. Their harvest depends not only upon favorable weather, but also upon dependable equipment. A strong plow cuts deeper soil, a sharp sickle gathers grain more efficiently, and a reliable axe clears woodland with less effort. Behind every successful harvest stands the patient craftsmanship of the village blacksmith. Although the blacksmith rarely works in the fields, every harvest is connected to the forge in some way. Without repaired tools, farmers lose valuable time during planting and gathering crops. In medieval Europe, even a short delay could reduce food supplies before winter arrived. The steady rhythm of hammer and anvil quietly supported the survival of entire communities, season after season, year after year. As another satisfied farmer leaves the forge carrying newly repaired equipment, a different kind of customer steps through the doorway. Resting upon the workbench are requests for hunting knives, heavy axes, and finely balanced blades that demand even greater precision. Our journey now continues into Chapter 6, where the blacksmith begins crafting the sharp iron tools and weapons that served villagers, craftsmen, and soldiers across medieval Europe. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, the workshop remains as busy as it was before dawn. One repaired tool leaves the forge while another immediately takes its place upon the anvil. The steady rhythm never truly stops. Every completed plough, axe, or sickle represents another family preparing for the coming season. The blacksmith understands that each finished tool carries responsibility far beyond its simple appearance. Medieval blacksmiths often became trusted advisors to local farmers. Through years of repairing worn equipment, they understood which tools lasted longest and which designs performed best in different soils. A farmer might ask whether a plough needed reinforcement or if a sickle should be reshaped before harvest. This practical knowledge made the forge more than a workshop. It became a place where experience was shared from one generation to the next. Although history often celebrates kings, castles, and great battles, the survival of medieval Europe depended just as much upon ordinary craftsmen and farmers. Without reliable tools, fields remained unplanted, harvests failed, and entire communities faced hunger. Every careful hammer blow inside the forge quietly contributed to the food that appeared on tables throughout villages, monasteries, and even noble households across the countryside. As the final farming tool cools beside the anvil, the blacksmith pauses briefly to inspect the day's work. The forge floor is scattered with flakes of iron scale. The charcoal fire still glows steadily, and the familiar scent of warm metal fills the air. There is little time to rest. More demanding commissions already wait upon the workbench, requiring greater precision and even finer craftsmanship than before. The day's agricultural work is finally complete, but the blacksmith's responsibilities are far from over. Waiting nearby are requests for hunting knives, heavy axes, armor fittings, and finely crafted blades that demand exceptional skill. Our journey now continues into Chapter 6, where we step deeper into the forge and discover how medieval blacksmiths craft the iron weapons and cutting tools that served both everyday villagers and professional soldiers alike. As the repaired farming tools leave the workshop, a different kind of commission now takes their place. Resting upon the wooden bench are bars of carefully selected iron waiting to become hunting knives, sturdy axes, and finely balanced swords. These objects demand greater precision than ordinary tools. Every hammer strike must be deliberate, for a single mistake could weaken the finished blade long before it ever sees daily use. Not every blacksmith possessed the skill required to forge swords. In many medieval towns, experienced bladesmiths devoted years to mastering this specialized craft. A good sword needed the right balance, flexibility, and strength. It had to withstand repeated impacts without bending or breaking. Creating such a weapon demanded patience, careful temperature control, and an understanding of iron that only years of practice could provide. The glowing iron is placed upon the anvil, where steady hammer blows begin drawing it into a long, narrow shape. Rather than forcing the metal into form, the blacksmith gradually stretches and refines it with careful precision. Each strike distributes the iron evenly, ensuring the future blade remains straight and balanced. Even a slight curve or uneven thickness could affect both durability and performance. Once the basic shape has been formed, the blade returns to the forge again and again. Heating and hammering are repeated many times throughout the process. This constant cycle strengthens the metal while allowing the blacksmith to correct small imperfections before they become permanent. The work is slow and demanding, reminding us that true craftsmanship rarely depends upon speed, but instead upon patience, experience, and careful observation. Contrary to popular imagination, swords were only a small part of a medieval blacksmith's workload. Most days were spent creating practical knives for kitchens, workshops, and farms. Every household relied upon sharp blades for preparing food, cutting rope, shaping wood, and completing countless everyday tasks. Whether humble or expensive, each blade reflected the same careful craftsmanship that defined the blacksmith's remarkable profession. As the blade begins taking shape, the blacksmith pays close attention to its thickness from end to end. A well-made knife or sword must remain strong without becoming unnecessarily heavy. Too much metal makes the blade difficult to handle, while too little may cause it to bend or break under pressure. Every careful hammer blow removes tiny imperfections, gradually creating a balanced tool capable of serving its owner for many years. Once the blade has reached its basic form, the blacksmith begins refining its edge with lighter, more precise hammer strikes. This stage demands complete concentration, as even the smallest mistake can leave the blade uneven. Medieval craftsmen understood that sharpness alone was not enough. A dependable blade required balance, durability, and a carefully shaped edge that would remain effective through repeated daily use. Many blades were strengthened through repeated heating and controlled cooling, a process that improved both hardness and flexibility. Although medieval blacksmiths did not understand modern metallurgy, generations of practical experience taught them which methods produced stronger results. These techniques were passed from master to apprentice through careful observation, allowing valuable knowledge to survive long before scientific explanations became available. Not every customer requested an expensive sword. Most villagers visited the forge seeking practical knives for preparing food, trimming leather, carving wood, or completing everyday household tasks. Hunters relied upon sturdy blades for processing game, while craftsmen carried smaller knives throughout their working day. These simple tools may appear ordinary, yet they were among the most frequently used objects produced inside the medieval forge. As another finished blade cools beside the anvil, sunlight pours through the workshop doorway, reflecting softly from its newly polished surface. The blacksmith carefully inspects the straightness of the edge before placing it with the day's completed work. Yet even more demanding commissions still remain. Soon the forge will echo with the creation of helmets, armor fittings, and protective ironwork that helped warriors survive the dangers of medieval battle. Creating armor demanded a different set of skills than forging blades. Instead of producing a sharp cutting edge, the blacksmith shaped broad iron plates designed to absorb powerful impacts. Every helmet, shoulder plate, and gauntlet had to balance protection with mobility. If the armor became too heavy, the wearer would tire quickly. If it was too thin, it might fail at the moment it was needed most. Not every village blacksmith produced complete suits of armor. In many parts of medieval Europe, only highly trained armorers specialized in this demanding craft. However, local blacksmiths regularly repaired damaged helmets, replaced broken buckles, forged chain links, and created smaller iron fittings. Their workshops remained essential, ensuring that soldiers, guards, and travelers could continue relying on equipment that was both strong and dependable. After the forging is complete, every blade is carefully examined before leaving the workshop. The blacksmith checks for straightness, smooth edges, and hidden cracks that could weaken the finished piece. Even the slightest imperfection is corrected whenever possible. Reputation is earned one tool at a time, and customers return because they trust the quality of the work rather than the promises of the craftsman. The forge now echoes with a familiar rhythm that has continued since before sunrise. Fire roars beneath the iron, the anvil rings with steady hammer blows, and tiny sparks rise into the smoky air before fading into darkness. These sounds accompany every stage of the blacksmith's work, forming a peaceful pattern that has remained almost unchanged for centuries across countless villages throughout medieval Europe. As the final blade is placed beside the finished tools, the blacksmith pauses only briefly before turning toward another demanding task. The intense heat of the forge has grown stronger throughout the day, and working beside it requires remarkable endurance. Our journey now continues into Chapter 7, where we experience the exhausting temperatures, constant smoke, and physical challenges that define everyday life inside a medieval blacksmith's workshop. By late afternoon, the workshop is noticeably hotter than it was at sunrise. The forge continues burning with relentless intensity, filling the air with waves of heat that surround the blacksmith from every direction. Sweat runs down the craftsman's face, soaking clothing dark with effort. Yet the hammer never stops. Every completed blade and repaired tool reflects not only skill, but also the remarkable endurance required to work beside the fire throughout the entire day. The blacksmith's hands reveal years of demanding labor. Thick calluses protect the palms from rough wooden handles, while tiny scars mark countless encounters with sharp iron and flying sparks. These marks are worn with quiet pride rather than regret. Each scar tells the story of another lesson learned inside the forge, where experience is earned through patience, discipline, and thousands of hours spent mastering the craft. As smoke rises toward the roof, sunlight filters through narrow openings, creating glowing beams filled with drifting ash and dust. The workshop feels both peaceful and powerful at the same time. Every sound, the crackling charcoal, the steady bellows, and the ringing anvil blends into a rhythm that has echoed across medieval villages for centuries, reminding us that craftsmanship often grows from quiet repetition rather than dramatic moments. Although many customers admire the finished blades and polished tools, few witness the exhausting work behind their creation. Hours of lifting heavy hammers, tending the fire, and standing beside intense heat demand exceptional physical strength. By evening, the blacksmith's muscles ache, yet tomorrow will begin exactly the same way. Such relentless dedication helped make these craftsmen among the most respected members of medieval society. The final blade is carefully placed upon the workbench as the forge continues glowing in the fading light of day. One demanding task has ended, but another is already waiting. As evening approaches, villagers continue arriving with broken locks, damaged hinges, and worn household tools. Our journey now moves into Chapter 7, where we discover how the blacksmith repaired the everyday objects that quietly kept medieval homes, workshops, and communities functioning. As the afternoon slowly fades, the blacksmith's work is far from finished. Instead of horseshoes or farming tools, villagers now arrive carrying broken door hinges, cracked cooking pots, damaged locks, bent nails, and worn iron brackets. These ordinary objects rarely appear in history books, yet they are essential to everyday life. Without constant repairs, homes, barns, workshops, and storage buildings would quickly begin to fall apart. One elderly farmer places a broken iron latch upon the workbench. The small piece seems unimportant at first glance, yet it secures the door, protecting the family's grain from thieves, rain, and hungry animals. The blacksmith carefully studies the damaged metal before placing it into the glowing forge. Even the simplest repair deserves complete attention, because small failures often led to much greater problems. Throughout medieval Europe, replacing damaged iron objects was often too expensive for ordinary families. Instead, nearly everything was repaired whenever possible. Broken nails were straightened, cracked hinges were reforged, worn locks were strengthened, and bent tools found new life beneath the hammer. This careful habit of repairing rather than replacing valuable materials helped families conserve precious resources in a world where iron remained costly. As each repaired item cools upon the workbench, another customer quietly steps inside the workshop. Some carry wagon parts damaged during long journeys, while others bring fireplace tools worn smooth after years of daily use. The forge rarely stands empty for long. Every household depends upon the blacksmith's ability to restore simple objects that keep ordinary life running safely and efficiently throughout the village. By now, the workshop reflects every part of medieval society. Farmers, merchants, carpenters, travelers, and local craftsmen all pass through its doorway carrying different needs, but sharing the same trust in the blacksmith's skill. Whether repairing a tiny hinge or forging a heavy iron chain, every task receives equal care. Inside this humble forge, no repair is too small when an entire community depends upon reliable craftsmanship. The blacksmith carefully reheats a cracked door hinge until the iron glows a soft orange. Rather than creating an entirely new piece, the damaged section is reshaped with steady hammer blows and reinforced where it has weakened over time. This careful repair saves valuable iron and charcoal while restoring the hinge to full strength. In medieval villages, extending the life of everyday objects was both practical and necessary. Beside the forge lies a growing collection of small iron objects waiting for attention. Bent nails, worn hooks, broken chains, damaged keys, and loose brackets may seem insignificant on their own, yet each serves an important purpose within the community. The blacksmith understands that everyday life depends upon countless simple tools working together. Even the smallest repair helps keep homes, workshops, and barns functioning smoothly. A merchant soon arrives carrying a damaged wagon wheel fitted with loose iron bands. Without immediate repair, the next journey could become dangerous on rough medieval roads. The blacksmith removes the worn metal, reheats it, and carefully reshapes the iron rim before securing it once more. Such repairs allow merchants to continue transporting grain, cloth, and other valuable goods between distant towns and busy marketplaces. Throughout the afternoon, the forge becomes a place where people exchange more than broken tools. While waiting for repairs, villagers discuss harvests, weather, local news, and stories from neighboring communities. Travelers describe distant roads, merchants share prices from nearby markets, and farmers compare the success of their crops. The blacksmith quietly listens while working, making the workshop an important center of both craftsmanship and conversation. As another repaired log cools upon the workbench, the blacksmith gently tests its movement before handing it back to its grateful owner. The workshop remains filled with the familiar sounds of fire, iron, and steady hammer blows. Yet the day is still far from over. As evening approaches, the forge prepares for its final hours, when cleaning tools, organizing the workshop, and preparing for tomorrow become just as important as the work itself. As evening draws nearer, the number of customers slowly begins to decline, but the blacksmith's work continues without pause. Each repaired item is carefully inspected one final time before leaving the workshop. Hinges must swing freely, locks must turn smoothly, and chains must bear heavy loads without failing. Every repair reflects the craftsman's reputation, built over many years through consistent quality rather than hurried workmanship. Many of the objects repaired inside the forge remain in use for decades. A strengthened door hinge protects a family's home through countless winters, while a repaired chain secures livestock year after year. These ordinary pieces of iron rarely receive admiration, yet they quietly support everyday life. The blacksmith understands that lasting craftsmanship is measured not by appearance alone, but by years of dependable service. Historical records suggest that medieval blacksmiths were among the busiest craftsmen in any village because nearly every household depended upon their skills. From repairing cooking equipment to reinforcing work hardware, their work reached every corner of society. Although their names seldom appeared in official chronicles, the quality of their craftsmanship shaped the daily lives of farmers, merchants, craftsmen, and travelers alike. As the forge begins to quiet, the blacksmith organizes the workshop for another demanding day ahead. Hammers are returned to their places, tongues are cleaned, unused charcoal is stored carefully, and finished tools are arranged for collection. These simple routines may seem unimportant, yet good organization saves valuable time before dawn, allowing tomorrow's work to begin without unnecessary delay or confusion. The glowing fire burns a little lower as the final customer leaves with newly repaired belongings. The workshop grows peaceful once more, though the day's labor is not yet complete. Before rest can finally begin, the blacksmith must extinguish the forge safely and prepare both the tools and the workshop for another early morning. Our journey now continues into Chapter 8, where we witness the quiet evening routine that brings another demanding day inside the medieval forge to a close. The forge grows quieter as the sun begins sinking behind the rooftops, yet the work has not completely ended. The blacksmith carefully checks the remaining repairs, ensuring nothing has been forgotten before tomorrow. Every finished lock, hinge, chain, and bracket is placed neatly upon the workbench. ready for collection. Order and preparation are just as valuable as skill, helping another demanding day begin smoothly before the next sunrise. With no new customers arriving, the blacksmith finally has a moment to inspect the workshop itself. The anvil is cleaned of loose iron scale, scattered tools are returned to their proper places, and fresh charcoal is measured for the following morning. These quiet routines may appear simple, but they reflect the discipline that separates an experienced craftsman from an inexperienced apprentice. Looking around the forge, it becomes clear how many different lives have passed through its doorway during a single day. Farmers, merchants, travelers, carpenters, and neighbors all arrived with different needs, yet each depended upon the same pair of skilled hands. The blacksmith rarely left the village, but through the people who visited, the entire world seemed to come to the workshop one customer at a time. As the fire slowly burns lower, the ringing of the hammer fades into silence for the first time since dawn. The warmth still lingers in the stone walls, and the familiar scent of charcoal remains in the air. Tomorrow will bring another long list of repairs and new commissions, but for now, the forge enjoys a brief moment of peaceful stillness after a full day of honest labor. The final glowing embers are carefully arranged so that a little warmth may remain until morning, making tomorrow's fire easier to awaken. The heavy wooden door closes, and the village settles into evening beneath a quiet sky. Our journey now continues into Chapter 8, where we leave the workshop behind and discover how the blacksmith returns home, sharing a simple meal with family, before resting for another demanding day in medieval Europe. As the heavy wooden door of the forge closes behind him, the blacksmith finally leaves the workshop after nearly an entire day beside fire and iron. The evening air feels wonderfully cool against his tired face, carrying the scent of fresh grass and distant cooking fires. The village has grown quieter now. Children return home, livestock settle into their pens, and families gather indoors as another medieval day slowly comes to an end. The walk home is short but peaceful. Passing narrow dirt roads, the blacksmith greets familiar neighbors who thank him for repairing a broken tool or fitting a horse with new shoes earlier that day. In a small medieval village, nearly everyone knows one another. Trust has been built over many years, not through grand speeches, but through dependable work completed honestly from sunrise until evening. Reaching home, the blacksmith is welcomed by the comforting glow of a simple fire burning inside the cottage. A modest supper waits upon the wooden table. Perhaps fresh bread, vegetable stew, cheese, or a little salted meat if the family has been fortunate. After hours of exhausting labor, even this humble meal feels deeply satisfying. Every bite reflects the hard work shared by countless hands throughout the village. As the family gathers together, conversation turns to the events of the day. Children speak excitedly about chores and small adventures, while adults discuss tomorrow's work, changing weather, and their coming harvest. These quiet moments around the evening meal offer rare opportunities to rest both body and mind. For the blacksmith, they are among the most treasured parts of an otherwise demanding and physically exhausting life. Although the day's work has ended, the blacksmith's hands still carry the warmth of the forge. Small cuts, calluses, and aching muscles serve as reminders of another honest day's labor. Tomorrow, long before sunrise, the cycle will begin again. Yet for this brief evening, surrounded by family and simple comforts, the relentless rhythm of hammer and anvil finally gives way to peace, gratitude, and well-earned rest. Before sitting down to rest, the blacksmith carefully washes away the soot and iron dust that have covered his hands and face since before sunrise. Clean water is often cold, but it offers welcome relief after hours spent beside the blazing forge. Even after washing, the smell of charcoal and hot iron lingers on his clothes. These familiar traces of the workshop have become a permanent part of daily life, quietly reminding him of the demanding craft that provides for his family. As darkness slowly settles across the village, the sounds of daytime gradually disappear. The ringing of hammers has ended. Wagons no longer travel the dusty roads, and only distant voices drift through the evening air. Inside the cottage, the blacksmith quietly inspects a few smaller tools that may need attention tomorrow. Even during these peaceful moments, his thoughts naturally return to the forge, where another busy day will begin long before the first light reaches the horizon. Around the fire, the family shares simple stories before preparing for sleep. The children listen with curiosity as the blacksmith speaks about travelers, merchants, and unusual repairs completed during the day. These conversations preserve knowledge from one generation to the next, teaching patience, responsibility, and respect for honest work. In many families, a young child watching these evenings would one day become an apprentice, continuing the same craft that had supported. Outside, the village has become almost completely silent beneath the night sky. Only the occasional bark of a distant dog or the gentle rustling of leaves interrupts the calm. Tomorrow's responsibilities are already waiting, yet there is comfort in knowing that every repaired tool, every fitted horseshoe, and every forged blade has helped another family continue their work. The blacksmith falls asleep with tired muscles, but a quiet sense of purpose earned through honest labor. With the fire fading into glowing embers and the cottage growing still, another ordinary day in the life of a medieval blacksmith comes peacefully to an end. Long before dawn, the forge will once again awaken with heat, smoke, and the ringing sound of hammer upon iron. But before a new morning begins, our journey now turns toward Chapter 9, where we explore the challenges, dangers, and physical hardships that every medieval blacksmith faced throughout a lifetime of demanding work. After supper, the blacksmith steps outside for a few quiet moments beneath the evening sky. The forge behind him has finally fallen silent, replaced by the gentle sounds of insects, distant owls, and the soft breeze moving through nearby trees. Looking across the sleeping village, he sees homes warmed by small fires and families ending their own long days. Tomorrow will demand the same strength and determination, but tonight there is comfort in knowing that honest work has helped. Inside the cottage, simple tools used for daily life are stored carefully for another morning. Clothing worn beside the forge is hung near the fire to dry, while worn leather gloves and heavy aprons are inspected for signs of damage. Nothing is wasted if it can still be repaired. This habit of caring for every possession reflects the practical mindset shared by countless medieval families, where replacing valuable items was rarely possible and careful maintenance became. As the children prepare for sleep, they quietly watch the blacksmith's steady routines. Without formal lessons, they begin learning by observation alone. They notice how tools are cleaned, how supplies are organized, and how tomorrow's work is planned before the day has even begun. These ordinary evenings become an education in responsibility and discipline, preparing the next generation through daily example rather than written instruction or formal schooling. Before resting, the blacksmith thinks ahead to the customers expected tomorrow. Perhaps another farmer will arrive with a broken plow, a merchant will request new wagon fittings, or a traveler will need fresh horseshoes before continuing a long journey. Every sunrise brings different challenges, yet the purpose remains unchanged. The forge exists to solve problems, strengthen the community, and provide dependable craftsmanship whenever it is needed most. The fire inside the cottage slowly fades into glowing embers as the family settles beneath warm blankets for the night. Outside, darkness quietly covers the village, hiding the forge until another dawn arrives. The blacksmith closes tired eyes, knowing only a few hours remain before work begins again. Our journey now continues into Chapter 9, where we explore the physical dangers, injuries, and remarkable endurance required to survive a lifetime beside the blazing medieval forge. Night has now settled completely over the village. The forge, which echoed with hammer strikes from before sunrise until dusk, stands silent beneath the stars. Only a faint warmth remains inside the stone hearth, waiting to help ignite tomorrow's fire. As the blacksmith rests, the workshop also seems to sleep, gathering quiet strength for another demanding day. In medieval life, every peaceful night was simply a short pause between two long days of honest labor. Lying upon a simple straw mattress covered with wool blankets, the blacksmith feels every muscle growing heavy after hours of lifting hammers and working beside intense heat. There are no luxurious beds or soft comforts, only the satisfaction that comes from completing another day of useful work. Sleep arrives quickly, not because life is easy, but because physical exhaustion leaves little room for restless thoughts before the coming dawn. Beyond the cottage walls, darkness hides the fields, roads, and workshops that will soon awaken once again. Somewhere a horse shifts quietly inside its stable, while a distant church bell marks another passing hour. Medieval villages rarely remained completely silent, yet the peaceful sounds of the night create a calm rhythm that gently replaces the noise of the forge. It is a rare moment when both the craftsman and the village can finally rest together. As we quietly leave the blacksmith's home behind, it becomes clear that his profession demanded far more than skill with fire and iron. Every repaired tool, every forged horseshoe, and every sharpened blade supported the lives of countless people throughout the community. His work began before sunrise and often ended long after sunset, making the blacksmith one of the hardest working and most dependable craftsmen in medieval Europe. Our peaceful day inside the medieval forge now comes to a close. We have followed the blacksmith from the first glowing embers before dawn to the final quiet moments before sleep. Yet there is still one final chapter ahead. Next, we will step back and reflect on the remarkable legacy of these craftsmen, whose quiet dedication shaped villages, strengthened communities, and left a lasting mark upon medieval history, long after the sound of their hammers had faded. Before the sun rises once again, let us pause and consider the hidden cost of this remarkable profession. Every day inside the forge exposed the blacksmith to dangers that few villagers fully understood. Flying sparks could burn exposed skin, heavy hammers could crush fingers, and glowing iron could cause painful injuries in a single careless moment. Behind every beautifully crafted tool stood years of discipline, caution, and constant awareness that one mistake might end a craftsman. The intense heat surrounding the forge created a challenge that never disappeared. During summer, the temperature inside the workshop became almost unbearable as the blazing charcoal fire burned continuously from dawn until evening. Sweat poured into the blacksmith's eyes. Clothing became soaked within hours, and exhaustion arrived long before the work was finished. Yet the fire could never be ignored, because maintaining the correct temperature determined the quality. Every swing of the hammer demanded strength, accuracy, and complete concentration. A moment of distraction could send the heavy tool crashing against a hand instead of the glowing iron resting upon the anvil. Even experienced blacksmiths occasionally suffered bruises, cuts, and painful injuries despite years of practice. Their craft rewarded patience and discipline, reminding every apprentice that confidence without caution could quickly become dangerous inside the medieval forge. Smoke presented another challenge that quietly affected blacksmiths throughout their working lives. Although many workshops allowed fresh air to enter through open doors and roof vents, charcoal smoke and fine particles still filled the air each day. Breathing these fumes for years could leave craftsmen coughing and struggling with their lungs. Medieval people rarely understood the long-term effects, yet their bodies carried the hidden burden of countless hours spent beside the fire. Despite these dangers, blacksmiths continued returning to the forge before dawn, driven by responsibility rather than comfort. Their village depended upon repaired tools, strong horseshoes, dependable locks, and countless other iron objects that kept daily life moving forward. Every sunrise demanded courage as much as craftsmanship. Understanding these hardships allows us to appreciate not only the tools they created, but also the remarkable determination required to create them. Working beside molten hot iron required constant attention because accidents could happen in an instant. A single piece of glowing metal slipping from the tongs might burn a foot, damage expensive tools, or even start a dangerous fire inside the wooden workshop. Every movement had to be calm and controlled. Experienced blacksmiths developed careful habits over many years, understanding that skill alone was never enough without patience, awareness, and respect for the powerful fire they worked. Heavy lifting formed another demanding part of the profession. Iron bars, large anvils, sacks of charcoal, working wheels, and farming equipment all required tremendous physical strength to move safely. Day after day, this relentless labor placed enormous strain upon the blacksmith's back, shoulders, and arms. By middle age, many craftsmen carried the lasting effects of decades spent lifting, striking, and shaping heavy materials from sunrise until long after the day's final customer had departed. The loud ringing of hammer against anvil echoed through the workshop hundreds, sometimes thousands of times each day. While the sound guided the rhythm of the blacksmith's work, it also surrounded the craftsman for years without relief. Medieval people had no understanding of hearing protection, yet many older blacksmiths likely experienced reduced hearing after spending a lifetime inside the forge. The familiar music of iron carried a hidden cost that became apparent only after many years. Even small injuries demanded serious attention in the Middle Ages. A cut from a sharp blade or a burn caused by glowing iron could become infected without modern medicine or antibiotics. Something that seems minor today sometimes threatened a craftsman's ability to work for weeks or even months, because an entire family's income depended upon the blacksmith's hands. Protecting them became one of the most important responsibilities inside the workshop every single day. Yet despite every hardship, injury, and exhausting hour beside the fire, the blacksmith returned faithfully to the forge each morning. His work supported farmers, merchants, travelers, builders, and families throughout the village. Every repaired hinge, sharpened axe, fitted horseshoe, and forged blade represented more than skilled craftsmanship. It reflected resilience, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to serving the community, regardless of the physical demands the profession required. Beyond the physical dangers, the blacksmith also carried a heavy burden of responsibility. A poorly forged horseshoe could leave a traveler stranded far from home, while a weak plow might fail during planting season and delay an entire harvest. Every tool leaving the forge carried someone's trust. Knowing that other people's livelihoods depended upon his workmanship placed quiet but constant pressure on the blacksmith throughout every working day. The profession also demanded remarkable endurance during times of crisis. After violent storms, destructive fires, or poor harvests, the number of repairs increased dramatically. Broken wagons, damaged farming tools, and weakened buildings all required urgent attention. While others struggled to recover, the blacksmith often worked even longer hours than usual. His forge became one of the first places the community turned to whenever disaster disrupted ordinary village life. Despite years of experience, every new commission required complete concentration. Iron never behaved exactly the same way twice, and changes in fuel quality, temperature, or the metal itself could affect the final result. Skilled blacksmiths never allowed confidence to become carelessness. They respected the unpredictable nature of fire and iron, understanding that mastery came not from taking risks, but from patiently repeating careful techniques learned through countless years of practice. As the years passed, the demanding work slowly changed the blacksmith's body. Strong arms and broad shoulders reflected decades of lifting heavy hammers, while worn joints reminded him of endless hours standing beside the anvil. Yet these signs of age were often accepted with quiet dignity. Among medieval craftsmen, such marks were respected as evidence of an honest life spent serving family, neighbors, and the wider community through skilled labor. Looking back across an entire lifetime, it becomes clear that the blacksmith's greatest achievement was not a single sword, horseshoe, or farming tool. Instead, it was the lasting trust earned through years of dependable service. Every repaired object, every satisfied customer, and every problem quietly solved strengthened the village in ways few people fully noticed. Our journey now moves into Chapter 10, where we reflect upon the enduring legacy that medieval blacksmiths left. Even with years of experience, a blacksmith could never predict every challenge waiting inside the forge. A hidden flaw within a bar of iron might reveal itself only after hours of careful work, forcing the entire process to begin again. Charcoal sometimes burned unevenly, changing the temperature of the fire without warning. Success depended upon constant observation, quick decisions, and the patience to correct problems before they became costly mistakes that wasted both time. Perhaps the greatest challenge was that the forge could never remain idle for long. Farmers needed tools before planting, merchants required work repairs before traveling, and horses depended upon fresh shoes before long journeys. Delaying the work meant delaying the lives of many others. Even when tired or recovering from small injuries, the blacksmith often returned to the anvil because the entire village depended upon the steady rhythm of his daily labor. Yet despite these hardships, many blacksmiths took genuine pride in their profession. Every completed tool represented more than shaped iron. It reflected years of learning, careful craftsmanship, and a promise that the finished object would serve another family well. The satisfaction came not from wealth or recognition, but from knowing that their hands had quietly improved the lives of countless people throughout the surrounding countryside. Looking back across the centuries, it becomes clear that the medieval blacksmith stood at the very center of village life. Without dependable craftsmen, fields could not be cultivated. Wagons could not travel safely, homes could not remain secure, and essential tools would slowly disappear. Although their names have largely faded from history, the strength of their work continues to remind us that ordinary people often shaped civilization just as powerfully as kings and warriors. Our journey through the dangers of the medieval forge now comes to a peaceful close. We have witnessed the heat, the risks, the discipline, and the extraordinary determination required to master this demanding craft. In our final chapter, we will quietly reflect upon the lasting legacy of medieval blacksmiths and why their humble work remains one of the greatest foundations of everyday life in the Middle Ages, even centuries after the final hammer blow fell silent. As our quiet journey nears its end, we can now look beyond the glowing forge and see the blacksmith's true legacy. His work reached far beyond iron and fire. Every horseshoe carried travelers safely across distant roads, every plough helped produce the harvest, and every repaired tool supported another family's survival. Though history often remembers kings and great battles, medieval villages were built just as surely by the steady hands of ordinary craftsmen whose daily labor quietly shaped. The knowledge of blacksmithing rarely came from books. Instead, It passed carefully from master to apprentice through years of patient observation and endless practice. Young apprentices learned how to judge the color of heated iron, control the fire, and strike the anvil with confidence. Each generation preserved these valuable skills, ensuring that the craft continued long after one blacksmith had laid down his hammer for the final time. Many of the tools created inside medieval forges influenced everyday life for centuries. The principles behind horseshoes, farming equipment, kitchen knives, locks, hinges, and hand tools changed very little over time because their designs worked remarkably well. Although technology continued to advance, countless inventions built upon the practical knowledge developed by generations of skilled blacksmiths working inside simple village workshops throughout medieval Europe. Today, museums, archaeological discoveries, and surviving medieval tools allow historians to better understand the remarkable lives of these craftsmen. Every worn hammer, damaged anvil, and carefully forged blade tells a quiet story of patience, determination, and extraordinary skill. These objects remind us that history is not preserved only through written records, but also through the everyday tools that helped ordinary people build, travel, work, and survive. As the last glow of the forge slowly fades from our imagination, we leave the medieval blacksmith where we first found him, surrounded by fire, iron, and quiet determination. His work may have ended centuries ago, yet its influence still echoes through history. The strength of his craft reminds us that civilization has always depended not only upon rulers and warriors, but also upon honest workers, whose dedication quietly shaped the lives of generations to come. Although centuries have passed since the Middle Ages, the influence of the medieval blacksmith can still be found all around us. Modern bridges, railways, machinery, and buildings all rely on the same fundamental understanding of shaping and strengthening metal. Today's advanced engineers and metalworkers follow scientific methods unavailable to medieval craftsmen. Yet they continue a tradition that first grew beside simple charcoal fires and heavy iron anvils many generations ago. The blacksmith's greatest achievement was not simply forging stronger iron, but earning the complete trust of an entire community. Villagers knew that every horseshoe, farming tool, lock, or blade leaving the forge had been crafted with care and experience. In a world without factories or mass production, reputation became more valuable than money. A dependable blacksmith served not only as a craftsman, but also as a symbol of honesty, responsibility, and lasting quality. Looking back, it is remarkable how much medieval life depended upon a single workshop. Food reached the table because farming tools remained strong. Trade continued because wagons and horses stayed in good condition. Homes remained secure because locks, hinges, and chains were carefully repaired. Without realizing it, nearly every person in the village relied upon the quiet labor taking place each day inside the glowing forge from dawn until dusk. As our journey slowly comes to its end, imagine the forge standing peacefully beneath the evening sky once more. The fire has faded into glowing embers, the hammer rests upon the anvil, and tomorrow's iron waits patiently beside the hearth. Another demanding day has finished. Yet the spirit of the blacksmith remains alive in every carefully crafted tool left behind. His work continues speaking across the centuries without the need for a single written word. Thank you for joining this peaceful journey through the life of a medieval blacksmith. We have followed his day from the first light before sunrise until the quiet moments before sleep, discovering not only the craft itself, but also the patience, resilience, and dedication behind every hammer strike. As you slowly drift toward rest, let the gentle rhythm of the forge fade into silence, carrying with it the quiet story of one of medieval Europe's most essential and respected craftsmen. The medieval blacksmith may never have won a crown or commanded an army, yet his influence reached nearly every corner of daily life. Every village relied upon his knowledge, his patience, and his ability to transform simple iron into objects that solved real problems. While rulers shaped the course of kingdoms, blacksmiths quietly shaped the lives of ordinary people. Their true legacy was measured not in fame, but in the countless communities that prospered because of their dependable. Archaeologists continue discovering blacksmith workshops buried beneath medieval towns and villages across Europe. Within these forgotten places, they uncover worn anvils, broken tongs, charcoal remains, unfinished tools, and countless fragments of iron. Together, these discoveries reveal a profession built upon discipline and remarkable skill. Every object recovered from the earth reminds us that history is preserved not only in castles and churches, but also inside the humble workshops where, perhaps the most remarkable lesson left behind by the medieval blacksmith is that meaningful work often happens quietly, without recognition or applause. Few people remembered the craftsman's name after many generations had passed, yet the homes he secured, the fields he equipped, and the journeys he made possible continued shaping everyday life. His greatest achievement was never personal glory, but the lasting strength and stability he brought to an entire community through honest labor. As we slowly step away from the glowing forge for the final time, the sounds that accompanied us throughout this journey begin to fade. The crackling charcoal grows quiet, the ringing anvil falls silent, and the steady rhythm of the hammer disappears into memory. Yet these familiar echoes remain woven into the history of medieval Europe, reminding us that every civilization is built not only by leaders, but also by skilled hands working faithfully each day. Thank you for spending this peaceful evening exploring the remarkable life of a medieval blacksmith. As you settle into rest, perhaps you can still imagine the warm glow of the forge, the gentle rhythm of careful hammer blows, and the quiet village preparing for another dawn. May these calm scenes remain with you as sleep arrives, carrying you softly through history until morning gently welcomes you back to the present. As we take one final look across the quiet medieval village, it becomes clear that the blacksmith's forge was far more than a place where iron was shaped. It was a symbol of reliability, cooperation, and shared survival. Every repaired plough strengthened the harvest, every fitted horseshoe kept trade moving, and every forged tool supported another family's future. Through humble craftsmanship and unwavering dedication, the blacksmith helped build a stronger community, one careful. History often celebrates the names of kings, generals, and famous explorers. Yet countless ordinary craftsmen quietly transformed the world without expecting recognition. The medieval blacksmith belonged to this forgotten majority. His achievements were measured not by monuments or written chronicles, but by the everyday lives he improved, the homes he protected, the fields he equipped, and the journeys he made possible remain his greatest and most enduring legacy across the centuries. If we could step into that peaceful village one last time, we would probably hear the familiar sound of the anvil echoing through the morning air once again. Smoke would gently rise above the workshop, farmers would patiently wait with worn tools, and travelers would prepare their horses for another long journey. Life would continue exactly as it had for generations, sustained by quiet routines that rarely changed, but always mattered deeply to the community. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson this journey has offered us. History is not only the story of extraordinary events, but also of ordinary people performing meaningful work every single day. The medieval blacksmith reminds us that patience, honesty, discipline, and service to others can leave an impact lasting far beyond a single lifetime. Even after the forge has grown cold, The values behind the craft continue inspiring generations that follow. Now, as our journey gently comes to its end, allow the sounds of the medieval forge to fade completely into the distance. Imagine the glowing embers growing dim, the hammer resting silently upon the anvil, and the quiet village settling beneath a peaceful night sky. Thank you for spending this calm evening exploring the life of a medieval blacksmith. May these gentle scenes remain with you as you relax, unwind, and drift peacefully into a restful night's sleep. Before we quietly leave this medieval village behind, let us take one final walk toward the old blacksmith's workshop. The forge is silent now, its fire reduced to a bed of faintly glowing embers beneath a blanket of soft ash. The heavy hammer rests upon the anvil exactly where it was placed after the day's final task. The air still carries the familiar scent of charcoal and warm iron, gentle reminders of a lifetime spent creating the tools that allowed an entire community to live, work. Tomorrow, long before the first rays of sunlight touch the rooftops, the blacksmith will once again unlock the workshop door and awaken the sleeping fire. Farmers will return with worn plows, merchants will arrive beside creaking wagons, and travelers will pause for fresh horseshoes before continuing their journeys. The rhythm of medieval life never truly stops. Instead, it repeats with quiet consistency, each day building naturally upon the one that came before through patience. As we step farther away from the forge, the sounds of the village become softer with every passing moment. The distant church bell fades into silence, evening birds settle among the trees, and a cool breeze moves gently through the narrow streets. Nothing here feels hurried. Time itself seems to slow, inviting both the villagers and us to appreciate the peaceful simplicity of ordinary life in a world shaped by skilled hands and quiet determination. Perhaps that is why medieval craftsmanship continues to fascinate us centuries later. These people lived without electricity, engines, or modern machines, yet they built communities through knowledge, cooperation, and remarkable perseverance. The blacksmith's forge was never simply a workplace. It represented hope, resilience, and the confidence that almost any broken object could be repaired through patience, skill, and careful effort rather than being discarded. Now our journey gently reaches its final destination. As the village disappears into the quiet darkness and the last glow of the forge fades beneath the stars, allow your thoughts to become just as calm and peaceful. Thank you for sharing this slow walk through medieval history. May the steady rhythm of the anvil, the warmth of the fire, and the quiet life of the blacksmith remain with you as you drift comfortably into a deep and restful sleep. The stars now shine brightly above the sleeping village, casting a gentle silver light across quiet rooftops and empty streets. The forge stands peacefully in the darkness, its chimney no longer releasing smoke into the cool night air. Inside, every hammer, pair of tongs, and iron tool rests exactly where it will be found again before dawn. The workshop seems almost alive, patiently waiting for another morning when the fire will awaken and the familiar rhythm of honest work will begin once more. If we listen carefully, we can almost imagine the countless generations of blacksmiths who stood before this same anvil. Fathers taught their sons, experienced masters guided young apprentices, and every lesson was passed from one pair of hands to another. Their knowledge survived not because it was written in great books, but because it was practiced every day with patience, humility, and respect for the craft. In this way, the forge became both a workplace and a living classroom. Although the world has changed beyond recognition since medieval times, the values practiced inside the blacksmith's workshop remain surprisingly familiar. Dedication, honesty, responsibility, and careful attention to detail are qualities that never grow old. whether shaping glowing iron centuries ago or building something meaningful today. Lasting success continues to depend upon steady effort rather than shortcuts. The blacksmith's quiet example still speaks to us across hundreds of years. As this peaceful evening comes to its natural conclusion, let your imagination slowly leave the village behind. Picture the narrow streets disappearing into the darkness, the final glow of the forge fading beneath the stars, and the gentle breeze carrying away the last faint scent of charcoal smoke. The noise of the modern world gradually melts away, replaced by calm silence. Only peaceful thoughts remain, inviting both body and mind to relax completely before sleep gently arrives. Thank you for spending these quiet hours exploring the remarkable life of a medieval blacksmith. Together, we have walked from the first spark before sunrise to the final embers glowing beneath the night sky. May the peaceful sounds of the forge, the steady rhythm of the hammer, and the timeless spirit of honest craftsmanship stay with you long after this story ends. Rest well, sleep peacefully, and until our next journey through history, good night. As the night grows deeper, the medieval village seems to disappear beneath a blanket of peaceful darkness. Only the faint outline of the blacksmith's workshop remains visible beneath the moonlight. The forge has finally fallen silent after a day filled with glowing iron, ringing hammers, and honest labor. Yet even in this quiet moment, the workshop seems ready for another dawn, patiently waiting for the first spark that will once again bring warmth, light, and purpose to the community. If we pause for just a little longer, we can almost hear the gentle echoes of centuries past. Countless blacksmiths once stood before similar anvils, shaping not only iron, but also the lives of everyone around them. Their work rarely appeared in royal records or famous stories, yet every village depended upon their steady hands. The strongest kingdoms were built upon the quiet efforts of ordinary craftsmen whose names have faded, while the value of their work has endured through history. Perhaps the greatest gift left behind by the medieval blacksmith is the reminder that meaningful work does not require recognition. Every careful repair, every well-made tool, and every honest day's labor became part of something much greater than the craftsman himself. Piece by piece, these quiet contributions strengthened families, supported communities, and allowed everyday life to continue. Even today, that lesson remains as valuable as it was hundreds of years ago. Now, the final embers inside the forge slowly lose their glow, and a peaceful silence settles over everything we have explored together. The smoke has disappeared into the cool night air, the heavy hammer rests quietly upon the anvil, and tomorrow's work patiently waits for another sunrise. There is nothing more to build tonight, nothing more to repair. The village itself seems to breathe slowly, inviting us to share in its calm and restful stillness. Thank you for joining this gentle journey through the life of a medieval blacksmith. From the first light before dawn to the final quiet moments beneath the stars, we have discovered a world shaped by patience, resilience, and simple craftsmanship. As you close your eyes and let the sounds of the forge fade into memory, may this peaceful story carry you gently toward deep, restful sleep. Until our next journey through history, good night and sleep well. As the final moments of our journey unfold, the medieval village rests peacefully beneath a sky filled with quiet stars. The forge stands dark and silent, its fire reduced to soft embers hidden beneath a blanket of ash. Every tool has been carefully returned to its place, waiting patiently for another morning. There is a comforting rhythm in knowing that tomorrow will begin just as today did, with determination, steady hands, and the timeless craft that has served generations of villagers through. Although the centuries have carried us far from the Middle Ages, the blacksmith story continues to speak with surprising clarity. It reminds us that lasting achievements are often built slowly, one careful task at a time. Great communities rarely grow from extraordinary moments alone. Instead, they are strengthened by ordinary people who quietly fulfill their responsibilities every single day, asking for little recognition while giving their very best to those who depend upon them. Now imagine taking one final walk through the sleeping village. The narrow streets are empty. The cottages glow softly behind wooden shutters, and the cool night breeze gently carries the last faint scent of charcoal through the air. Somewhere nearby, a horse rests peacefully after a long day's journey, while tomorrow's unfinished work waits patiently inside the silent forge. Everything feels calm, unhurried, and perfectly at peace beneath the quiet medieval sky. As our footsteps gradually fade into the distance, the sounds of the forge disappear with them. The ringing hammer, the crackling fire, and the steady breathing of the bellows become quiet memories drifting gently into the night. Yet the lessons left behind remain timeless. Patience, resilience, craftsmanship, and service to others continue inspiring people today, just as they did hundreds of years ago inside that humble medieval workshop where ordinary work created extraordinary value. As we remain for just a little longer in this peaceful medieval village, let us quietly reflect on everything the blacksmith's life has shown us. His days were never easy, yet they followed a steady rhythm built upon patience, discipline, and responsibility. Long before sunrise, he began his work, knowing that every swing of the hammer would help another family continue their daily lives. His story reminds us that true strength often grows through quiet perseverance rather than moments of great. One of the most remarkable lessons left by the medieval blacksmith is the importance of mastering a single craft with complete dedication. He did not rush his work, nor did he search for easier paths. Every horseshoe, farming tool, kitchen knife, or iron hinge demanded the same careful attention regardless of its size or value. Over many years, these small acts of consistency earned something far more valuable than wealth, the complete confidence and respect of an entire community. In today's world, where machines can produce thousands of identical objects every hour, it is easy to forget how much time and skill once stood behind even the simplest iron tool. Every object inside a medieval home represented hours of careful labor performed by experienced hands. Nothing was treated as disposable. Instead, people repaired, maintained, and preserved their belongings because every piece carried both practical value and the effort of the craftsman who had created it. The blacksmith also teaches us that progress rarely arrives through dramatic change alone. Instead, it grows little by little through daily effort repeated with patience. Every repaired plough helped produce another successful harvest. Every strengthened wagon allowed merchants to travel farther. Every sharpened axe made difficult work just a little easier. Together, these seemingly ordinary improvements quietly transformed entire communities over many generations without attracting attention. As the peaceful night continues around us, imagine the forge standing quietly beneath the stars once more. The fire has gone cold, yet its influence remains alive in every field that was cultivated, every home that was protected, and every journey that safely reached its destination. Although the blacksmith himself has long since disappeared into history, the quiet impact of his honest work continues to echo across the centuries, reminding us that even the simplest craft can leave an. As we quietly continue our journey, it becomes clear that the blacksmith's greatest tool was not the hammer resting upon the anvil, but the patience carried within his character. Iron could not be rushed. If heated too quickly, it became brittle. If struck before reaching the proper temperature, it might crack beyond repair. Every successful piece required careful timing, steady hands, and calm judgment. In many ways, the forge taught its master patience long before it taught him how to shape. The blacksmith's workshop also reminds us that every profession depends upon countless unseen routines. Visitors notice the glowing fire and the ringing hammer, yet few recognize the hours spent preparing charcoal, organizing tools, cleaning the workshop, or maintaining the bellows. These quiet tasks received little attention, but they allowed every larger accomplishment to become possible. Behind every finished masterpiece stood hundreds of small responsibilities completed faithfully without. Perhaps this explains why the blacksmith earned such lasting respect throughout medieval society. People trusted him not because he spoke loudly or claimed great importance, but because his work remained reliable year after year. Every repaired lock protected another home, every sharpened blade served another harvest, and every carefully fitted horseshoe carried another traveler safely onward. Trust was never demanded. Instead, it was patiently earned through thousands of ordinary acts. Imagine once more the warm glow of the forge before sunrise. The village still sleeps while only one small workshop shines against the darkness. Inside, the blacksmith quietly prepares for another demanding day without knowing what challenges may arrive. Some customers will need urgent repairs. Others will request entirely new tools. Yet every visitor will receive the same careful attention. Such quiet dedication became the foundation upon which medieval communities continued to grow. As our peaceful reflection continues, the forge slowly becomes more than a workplace within our imagination. It becomes a symbol of perseverance, responsibility, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from doing meaningful work with care. Long after the fire has faded and the hammer has fallen silent, these timeless values continue living beyond the walls of the workshop. They gently remind us that history is often shaped not by extraordinary moments alone, but by ordinary people faithfully. As the centuries quietly pass before our imagination, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The blacksmith did far more than shape iron. He helped shape trust within the community itself. Farmers depended upon his tools to feed their families. Merchants relied upon his repairs to continue their journeys, and neighbors returned again and again because they knew his work would last. In a world filled with uncertainty, the forge became a place where reliability could always be found. One careful. Another lesson hidden within the blacksmith's life is the value of preparation. Long before the first customer arrived, the fire had already been lit, the bellows tested, the charcoal arranged, and every hammer placed exactly where it belonged. These quiet routines rarely attracted attention, yet they determined whether the entire day would succeed. Medieval craftsmen understood that excellence begins long before the real work appears, growing from countless small habits repeated faithfully. It is also remarkable how closely the blacksmith worked alongside nature itself. The quality of charcoal depended upon carefully selected wood. Iron arrived from distant mines hidden beneath the earth. Water cooled glowing metal, while the wind feeding the bellows strengthened the fire. Every finished tool represented a partnership between human skill and the natural world. The forge was not separate from nature, but another place where its powerful forces were carefully understood. If we pause beside the silent anvil one final time, we can almost imagine the countless stories that unfolded within this humble workshop. Children watched their first sparks fly into the air, travelers prepared for uncertain roads, and farmers placed their hopes upon freshly repaired tools before another planting season began. Each visitor carried away more than iron alone. They left with renewed confidence that tomorrow's work could continue, because someone had quietly restored what had. As our peaceful reflection gently continues, the medieval blacksmith becomes more than a historical figure remembered from distant centuries. He represents the quiet dignity found in honest labor, careful craftsmanship, and unwavering commitment to serving others. Though his forge has long since grown cold, The values he practiced remain timeless. They continue reminding us that patience, responsibility, and dedication often leave the deepest marks upon history, even when the people who lived. As dawn approaches once more in our imagination, the forge stands ready to begin another ordinary day that will quietly shape countless lives. The blacksmith asks for no applause, no rewards, and no place in the history books. His satisfaction comes from knowing that every repaired tool, every carefully forged nail, and every fitted horseshoe will make someone else's work just a little easier. Sometimes the greatest contributions to history are made by people whose names are never remembered. Perhaps the greatest lesson we carry away from this journey is that true craftsmanship is measured by consistency rather than speed. The blacksmith never rushed simply to finish another task. Every piece of iron deserved careful attention from the first heating to the final cooling. That quiet dedication transformed ordinary materials into reliable tools that served families for many years. It reminds us that lasting quality is almost always the result of patience, discipline. Imagine the forge once again resting peacefully beneath the evening sky after another successful day. The fire has grown quiet, the anvil stands silent, and the heavy hammer waits patiently where it has rested for generations. Nothing appears extraordinary at first glance. Yet within this humble workshop, thousands of small moments have shaped the lives of an entire village. History is often written through such ordinary places, where simple acts of service quietly become extraordinary over time. As we slowly prepare to leave medieval Europe behind, the image of the blacksmith remains clear within our thoughts. His hands were marked by years of hard labor, his clothing carried the scent of charcoal, and his workshop echoed with the steady rhythm of honest work from dawn until dusk. Though centuries now separate us from his world, the values he practiced, integrity, resilience, humility, and responsibility, remain as meaningful today as they were in his own lifetime. Now our extended journey finally reaches its peaceful conclusion. The stars shine quietly above the sleeping village. The forge has fallen completely silent, and tomorrow's work patiently waits beyond the horizon. Thank you for spending these calm hours exploring the brutal life of a medieval blacksmith. As every sound gently fades into stillness, allow your breathing to slow, your thoughts to drift, and your mind to settle into complete relaxation. May the warmth of the forge,